Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this emergency webinar to stop ICE terror and to prevent the coup. So I'm Jill Stein, and I'm with Lifeline for Palestine, and together with Code Pink, we sort of decided to jump in and seize the moment here because we are in an incredible state of emergency and on many counts. So we wanted to help empower people to seize this moment because this is kind of a tipping point for some very important legislation. Basically, Congress has been flooding these criminal rogue agencies, these violent agencies with well over $100 billion, going on almost $200 billion, just an incredible outpouring of our tax dollars for these agencies, which are very much at the root of the violence now being committed in our streets, and also the undermining of our democracy, which wasn't in such good shape to start with, but certainly the violations of constitutional rights and human rights and our civil rights have just gone off the charts. And the prospects of a coup in November are increasingly real and concrete with Donald Trump now and his Department of Justice very specifically trying to acquire federal voter rolls from the states, which is illegal, actually stealing them from one county in Georgia, suing some 20 other states or more now for their voter rolls, trying to extort them from Minnesota. And then Steve Bannon announcing last week that ICE would be used to surround the polls in November. And there are plenty of alarming signs right now that we are really in a state of emergency with regard to our democracy, but also with regard to the violence in the streets. And so we thought it's really important for us to connect the dots right now because this is all happening because Congress is throwing all this money at ICE and Customs and Border Protection right now, which received somewhere between $140 and $170 billion this year alone. That's funding for a couple of years, but they get access to it very quickly, and they're growing very quickly. They are extremely destructive and violent agencies. We're seeing that all over in the communities. Really, no one is safe from what they're doing, but in particular, vulnerable groups, migrants, anyone with dark skin, essentially, is very much at risk right now. The communities have been doing an incredibly heroic job of standing up and pushing back. There's a big success to be celebrated today, which is thanks to the courage and the outcry and the resistance at the grassroots in the street. In Minneapolis in particular, that ICE is now leaving finally, and rather suddenly, ICE is withdrawing from Minnesota, which is great and a real tribute to the strength of the resistance in Minnesota. But, it's not as though it's over. They're going somewhere else, and they're in the process of getting much bigger, more powerful, more defiant. They are not subject to judicial orders, to the Constitution, to due process and the rule of law in any way. So this is a very dangerous entity in the process of becoming much more dangerous. And we're now on notice that there are plans in the works. We don't know that they're confirmed, but there's certainly big red flags flying now that ICE and CBP, Customs and Border Protection, are very, very likely to be used to surround the polls, that is, to prevent, and to intimidate lots of people from voting and to effectively take control of our elections. So we would be nuts not to be taking it seriously and not to be absolutely raising Cain with our Congress that is throwing all this money at these criminal and violent agencies. So our feeling was we're at a a really powerful inflection point now. There's another 10 billion or so that is in play right now for ICE. And it's really important for us to stand up and to tell our congressional representatives that we know what's going on here, and we are holding them accountable to stop this and to hold them accountable if they don't stop this. And this is in addition, of course, to the resistance going on at the level of the communities, which we have, which we're absolutely reliant on. That's kind of the engine here of the social movements. But we can help strengthen those movements by actually getting traction in the halls of power, by compelling our elected officials to actually, follow the dictates and the wishes of their constituents, who are really quite horrified in increasing numbers at what ICE is doing and these policies of incredible abuse. What ICE had said would be focusing on the worst of the worst, is absolutely not true. It's everybody and their brother who is being subject now to kidnapping, to home invasions, to murder, to incredible violence. And, this endangers all of us, and we are holding Congress responsible. This is a really pivotal moment right now because this funding is it's in play, and this is funding for the entire what is it called? ICE and CBP and Homeland Security, DHS. This is like the whole DHS, which has not been funded. It's really DHS plus Coast Guard and a few others are in this final bill. And we don't know exactly what Congress is going to do with it, and it doesn't matter. They need to hear from us in any event that we do not want ICE and CBP to receive further funding. Our purpose here tonight is to just help connect the dots for people, help fill people in on this incredible state of emergency in terms of our community's safety, in terms of the violence being inflicted out on the street and in our homes, in schools and churches and in the courts. Really, there is no place which is safe now from the abuse and the violence of these rogue criminal mobs. So we're here to just help get the facts on the table, to help empower everyone with a better understanding of what's going on, resources to, to further inform ourselves, and above all, to hold our elected representatives' feet to the fire, to compel them to behave according to the majority wishes, because it's a strong majority now that is enormously in disapproval of the actions of ICE and CBP. So we have the power of human rights, the power of our shared values, and the power of democracy, that is the numbers here, to compel our elected reps to do the right thing. One quick comment here is that, the Democrats will often say, oh, but we can't do anything. That's actually not true, because most of what goes through Congress requires, at least 60% in the Senate. Republicans do not have 60%. If Democrats were calling for party discipline, which is what the Republicans do all the time, if the Democrats were using the power of their so-called whips to compel people to move according to the party's supposed agenda, this could be stopped. There actually wouldn't be a penny appropriated, because whatever the Congress has done in the big beautiful bill, which was the exception to that 60% rule, that went through just by majority vote. But they can't appropriate anything without support from Democrats. And if Democrats were standing up here to stop ICE or to support healthcare and prevent the devastating cuts to Medicaid and other healthcare programs, this would not be happening. So it's really important for us to let them know that we know that this is inexcusable and unjustified, and they very well can stand up and stop it. By the way, both Schumer, the head of the Senate, and Jeffries, the head of the House for the Democrats, the minority heads, they've both gone on record that they will not exercise their whip powers, that is, their powers to compel members of the party to uphold supposed party values. So we want to let them know we know what's going on here, and we know that this can be stopped. And for them to fail to stop this, to fail to stop flooding this criminal organization, ICE and Customs and Border Protection, for Congress to continue throwing billions of dollars at them, basically is for Congress to be funding not only violence in our streets, but Congress is funding and enabling a highly likely coup at the polls. It's now, the red flags are flying high and strong that there is a plan in the works now. And we've seen that in many ways, both in the lawsuits to grab the federal voter, the state voting rolls, which the feds do not have a right to. Those are protected. So there's a real hijack, which is already in process, but there are real warning signs about what could happen in November. And for the Democrats to continue throwing funds at ICE and CBP with all that on the table is just an outrage. And we need to let them know that they're basically funding a coup here. And we demand that that be stopped. Much more to be said, but that will come out here in the course of our discussion. So I'm going to move right now to Fernando Deveras, who has very kindly mobilized, and I must say that everybody is mobilizing here right now very, very quickly. This has been kind of a, the ultimate grassroots effort. This has been organized about 24 hours ago, really, that we got the speakers together and then went public and put out the notice. And there's enormous interest. I think people are very upset and are generally feeling very disempowered right now, with the exception of the resistance that's going on at the community level. And that is absolutely amazing. So we wanted to start off here with Fernando Deveras, who is a Mexican-American son of immigrants, a father, a community organizer, a certified educator, and a social media commentator. His page on Instagram, which is at fernando.deveras, is dedicated to providing education on topics such as history, politics, and current events in a way that's accessible, action-oriented, and tackling issues on the local, national, and international level. And his advocacy work is centered around empowering working-class families through education, community organizing, and direct action. So thank you so much, Fernando. Just as a basic housekeeping measure, we'll be soloing the speakers for their speaking time. When you're coming to the end of that time, we'll signal by putting you back into panel mode, and it'll be about 10 minutes for each speaker for us to get through the evening and still have some time then for discussion. So please put any questions that you have or comments, please enter them into the Q&A function, or you can put them in the chat, but we're more likely to catch them if it's in the Q&A. So with that, we'll go ahead and look forward to your kicking us off. Thank you so much, Fernando.
Thank you, Dr. Jill Stein. And before I jump in, I just want to pay respects to all the folks who are on this call. When I got a text message from Dr. Jill Stein yesterday saying if I wanted to be on this panel with Medea Benjamin, Butch Ware, Roger Waters, Antonio Aguilar, and yourself, it was a bit of a surreal moment for me, to be honest, just coming from my little corner of Orange County here to see, Medea Benjamin, I've been a big fan of yours. I love seeing the videos of you making our elected officials uncomfortable in the halls of power. So thank you. Obviously, Jill Stein, Butch Ware, I love that y'all were offering people a third party option in the wake of the election in 2024, when we saw you had the fascist Trump administration coming in versus the genocide enabling Democrats. So thank you for at least giving people a third choice there. And Roger Waters, I've been a fan, obviously, of Pink Floyd as a fellow musician myself, and seeing your political advocacy more so just really strengthened my admiration. So thank you for that. And Antonio, seeing the work that you did as a former service member, calling out the injustices in Gaza. So thank you for the work that you do there as well. So to give y'all a little background about myself and who I am, as Dr. Jill Stein introduced, my name is Fernando de Veras. I'm the son of immigrants. My family came here to the U.S. in the 70s, undocumented, crossing the border without papers. My mom was lucky enough to receive amnesty in the 80s and eventually got her citizenship. She had me and my brothers in the early 90s. I grew up in an immigrant family with immigrant experience. But I didn't really come to see the impacts of our broken immigration system here in the US until I was much older. And I live here in the city of Santana. For those who are not familiar, it's a city of around 350,000 people here in Orange County, California, just south of the city of Anaheim, happiest place on earth. And they have their own issues. We can talk about that if y'all are interested. But our city here in Santana has a population of around 78% Latino, with about 40% foreign born, a significant population of undocumented immigrants here in our city. And when we saw ICE activity happening last year, we started to mobilize on the ground. We know just from past experiences here in the local politics and seeing the way that politicians at the national level fail to rise up to these moments, that we needed to rely on each other, on the community advocacy work. We're fortunate to have organizations like the Orange County Rapid Response Network, who provide trainings for people who may not know their rights when it comes to ICE actions. They provide people who are out doing patrols. We have autonomous organizations as well, people who are not necessarily online showing their faces, but are doing the work of looking after our community here. As I said, when we started to see the activity here in our city, we were looking to our local officials. We were looking to our city council members and our mayors to see what they had to say. Would they be speaking out forcefully against this activity? We are fortunate enough to have people on the council like Jonathan Hernandez, Jesse Lopez, Benjamin Vasquez, who are standing strong and standing shoulder to shoulder with the community. Our mayor, on the other hand, a woman by the name of Valeria Mesqua, was telling the community that there was nothing we could do, that our hands were tied, that it's up to DC, it's a federal issue, and the best that we can do is lay low, keep our heads down, and hope that the federal government doesn't take funds away from us so that we can continue to afford city services. When we heard that, it essentially sounded to us like she was selling those people off, just saying it's too bad that you're going to be targeted. It's too bad that your families will be torn apart, but we can't worry about you. We have our congressional representative, Jose Luis Correa, who goes by Lou Correa, who was at least taking the time to speak out and say that this was not okay. But I would say that as a typical Democrat, his line of pushback was very timid for the moment, where people were calling for the abolition of ICE, seeing how families were being devastated in our communities. Congressmember Lou Correa was saying that we need ICE to have body cameras on at all times. We need them to have their masks down so that we can identify them as they're kidnapping our neighbors. We need them to go through the full training to make sure that they are actively using all the equipment that billions of dollars in tax dollars is buying for them. And so when we see that they are pushing the Overton window, not to what people are actually fighting for, which is to stop these stormtroopers who are terrorizing our communities, but rather saying we want reform to better regulate these stormtroopers. And even when it comes to the funding, we know that they're getting a supercharge in funding. And the argument is not take that funding back, put it back in the hands of the people, and fund things that we actually deserve, things that we actually need, but rather it's to stop the funding as is, to keep it where it's at, and let's just hope things get better down the line. And so, as I mentioned, we're fortunate here in the city of Santana that we have people on the ground who are pushing back. We have community members who are realizing that the people in these halls of power, the representatives, the Congress, the Senate, they are not doing enough. And so they are showing up to events and they're causing a ruckus. They're putting pressure on them to do more. And so we do start to see that tune change. Our mayor, after having 4 hours worth of public comment, calling her out for her inaction, after the National Guard was called to our city in response to protest, after tear gas was deployed on residents in response to protest. And she received 4 hours of community comment calling her out for her inaction. She started to change her tune. And suddenly she's starting to stand a little closer, shoulder to shoulder with the community, trying to provide whatever resources she can to protect her public image. And similarly, our elected representative, Jose Luis Correa, is starting to change his tune online. We see that he's being slightly more aggressive. It's still not enough. And so I'm grateful that we're having spaces like this to put that additional pressure on our elected representatives. I'll pause right there. If y'all have any questions for me, anything that you would like to hear more about, I'm happy to add.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Fernando. Let me just see if we have any questions coming in yet, or we may batch the questions once we get a little further in. Let me just do a quick check here. Comment from Lebanon. In Lebanon, our version of ICE is the IDF, and we're all facing the same evil. Together we stand. And, I think you really sort of address that in your comments that, if we allow ourselves to be isolated and defensive and intimidated, then they get the upper hand. But it's not like they have either justice or the cause of right or the numbers on their side. They most definitely don't. I'll just ask you briefly, among your community, was it surprising at all, or were people just kind of seeing this in the works and ready to come out swinging? Was it, was it kind of natural and easy for the community to start standing up? Because it's not always. People are rightfully frightened. Was that an issue, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, and I want to stress, I'm one individual. I'm lucky that I have a platform online where I can talk about these issues, but a lot of the work is being done by people whose faces you'll never see. And so I would say that when it came to seeing the activity that was coming in 2025, knowing the population that we have in our city, knowing that we have a significant undocumented population here, the fear was there. People immediately started talking as soon as inauguration day, saying, what do we need to look out for? The school district started activating, saying, how can we make sure that our schools are a safe haven, that parents don't have to worry about getting snatched up as they bring their kids to school? We started to see, again, these local organizations that have been around for a while, because when Trump came into office in 2016, that's where a lot of these activities, all these organizations started to build their foundations, right? Because we knew that we needed to fight back. And so 2025 was really just activating that network once again and strengthening that network, getting to educate the community about what are your rights, what can you do to fight back, who are your representatives, and what can we be pressuring them to do. I will say that it was it was overwhelming. There were organizations who were used to getting a few calls a month about potential federal agents in our communities, and it started happening, multiple calls per day. And so we started to really have to put out those calls to say, we need more hands on deck. We need more people showing up. It's difficult when there are so many people in our community who are vulnerable themselves, who have family members who are vulnerable themselves. But even still, as I mentioned, when we had protests happening last summer, we had thousands of people marching through the streets unafraid. Just recently, this last month, when we saw a wave of student protests happening across the country, again, we had people all over the county, including in more affluent cities like Irvine, California, where you wouldn't expect to see that activity, but we had high school students marching out there in solidarity with our communities. So I would say it was overwhelming at first. There were lots of people who are not necessarily invested in the political organizing space who were waiting to see what would happen. But once they saw how bad it was getting, once they saw the ruthlessness and the recklessness of ICE agents, they realized that they had to show up. And so I'm glad to see that we have more people stepping into the fold. Our job is to provide them an avenue and show them what they can do to fight back.
Thank you so much, Fernando. Really appreciate your experience is so inspiring and encouraging. Your courage is contagious. Thank you for being here and being a part of this discussion. And we'll circle back around once we've been through some more of the speakers, and we'll give people a chance to put some questions up into the Q&A. But I want to jump to Butch right now. And I'm going to be really short on the intro because I know Butch has another commitment. He's currently running for governor in California, so he's pretty swamped at the moment. Thank you, Butch, for taking the time. And I'll just say that when I had the pleasure of meeting Butch during our presidential campaign. I had one conversation, and the next morning we came back and we said, "Hey, have you ever thought of running for vice president?" Because he's just extremely compelling in every way possible, and is among many other things, aside from being, a father, an activist and an educator. He's also, an Islamic scholar and a professor of, I don't know if it's Islamic history in particular, but it's a history of revolution and how societies actually get to the point of being ready to stand up and make transformational change, which is clearly where we are right now. So, with that in mind, I had asked Butch to, just give us whatever commentary you'd like, but in particular, Butch's perspective, historical perspective of what this fight means for ICE, and how we mobilize against fascism and the inevitability of our liberation. Go ahead, take it away, Butch. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, it's always an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be in a virtual gathering with you, Jill. And thank you for calling me into the electoral space of this work. Great to see Roger again. Long time no see, brother. We all had an awful lot of fun in the Bay Area. Medea, we had a great time not too long ago in Long Beach. Fernando, you and I stay connected, and Anthony, looking forward to building with you sooner than later. So I'm going to speak first as a historian. I'm going to speak, I think, in 3 distinct temporalities in my 9 minutes that are remaining. I'm going to start with the past, then say a moment about the present, and then move from there towards the future. So the first thing that I want to say is that Jill, the picture that you painted is exactly right. We know that this Gestapo fascist police force is being prepared to terrorize people at the polls in order to produce very specific electoral outcomes. And I hate to be the black man historian that is a wet blanket in this moment, but terrorizing people at polling places is not a new thing for America. Right? This place was founded on terrorizing Black people at polling places to try to make sure certain electoral outcomes occurred, that the Black franchise never, in point of fact, threatened white supremacy. And no less of a poet than Langston Hughes once famously said, this was in a poem that he called Beaumont to Detroit. He said, "You Jim Crowed me before Hitler rose to power, and you're still Jim Crowing me right now, this very hour." So while some are awakening to this threat because of its imminence for certain populations in this moment, this has always been a reality that Black and brown people have felt. That boot has been on our neck for a long time. So I want us to take inspiration from the Black resistance struggle, from the freedom struggles of our Chicano brothers and sisters in this moment, because it is going to take that kind of historical rootedness and resolve to rise to the call of this moment. To the present. I flew to Minnesota when Alex Preddy was murdered. I flew to Minnesota because I grew up a block away from where he was shot. I could see places that I had played in the background footage. And in that same city of Minneapolis, I was stopped for driving while Black no less than 17 times without ever being ticketed before I reached my 18th birthday. We know what a surveillance state looks and feels like. We know what policing and the violation of our civil liberties looks and feels like. But what I found that is heartening for me is that I found a community there in Minnesota, and I found a community, as Fernando mentioned, in Santa Ana and in other places in the state of California and all over this country, that people are starting to find their legs for resistance. They're starting to understand what they are up against and no longer simply sitting back. When I talked to my brother in Minneapolis, he said they picked the wrong state. They're going to learn who they're dealing with. And communities across this country are finding their voice. They are saying it with their chest in this moment. Y'all picked the wrong ones because we have been through fights. That community in Minneapolis, 2020, when George Floyd was murdered, they learned the power of their voice. They learned the power of their resistance. And we must lean into the power of our voice and build shoulder to shoulder with one another in solidarity. Because as Malcolm, my hero, mentor, idol, he's always here in my office over my shoulder. Malcolm told us we are not outnumbered, we are out organized. We have the power. And as Huey P. Newton liked to say, all power to the people. If we embrace our power in this moment, if we rise up and fight back and hold the people who hold power in our names accountable, then we can continue to move them. And most importantly, we can continue to build the community strength and solidarity that is needed for us as humans to resist this debilitating regime of terrorism and oppression. Because those of us that have been fighting this struggle for centuries know that it comes with waxing and waning. There are moments that you are up and there are moments that you are down. You don't always get to see the fruit of your liberation efforts, but it is your job to stand firm on your watch and move the progress of liberation forward. So we are not going to let them wind back the clock to the 1930s and the 1940s on us. We are going to stand and fight, which brings us to the future, which brings us to the inevitability of our victory. Because Jill mentioned I teach Islamic history. I teach the history of African Muslim revolutionary movements specifically and Black liberation movements in the US. I'm teaching my Black revolutionaries class right here at UCSB right now. But my personal resistance is rooted in that Black liberation tradition and in my faith and Malcolm's faith, the faith of Islam. I converted when I was 15. And what I found when I read the Quran was this profound truth that we see expressed across all of our faiths and philosophies, all of our traditions, sacred and secular, which is that all empires fall. And this one will be no exception. We are witnessing the escalation in the nakedness of the brutality and the tactics precisely because empire is at its weakest moment. It is in a moment of critical decline, and all we need to do is to stand up and fight back to put an end to this empire. I don't refer to what's happening in our streets now as an imperial boomerang, because Frantz Fanon and Aimé Césaire reserved that category for Europe. They saw this as the fascism rising there as the return back of what had been done in the colonies. A settler colony like the United States of America can't have an imperial boomerang. It's always been an empire. It has always been rooted in indigenous dispossession. It has always been rooted in enslavement. And we have the great honor and duty to end this empire and hold this republic accountable for all of its broken promises, for all of the damage. I have unfinished business with that flag, and I am heartened that in rooms like this one, virtual rooms, or the collective gathering that we had for our campaign event in San Leandro, where you saw straight people, queer people, trans people, Muslims, anti-Zionist Jews, Christians, people of every shade and color coming to the realization that our collective power will get us to collective liberation. So I'll end my comments there. I am not broken or bowed by this moment. I am ready to fight, and I hope that everybody in this room is ready to fight alongside me. Peace and power, y'all.
Thank you so much, Butch. Powerful words. And yeah, I mean, this is an incredible moment. And I think many of us are feeling this. As dark as the moment is, we are so uplifted right now by the incredible courage and commitment that we're seeing all around, and people are just not wasting their time anymore with, being siloed from each other, and really recognizing that together we are unstoppable. Together we do have the numbers. This is all about getting organized. And like Palestine brought many of us together around the world to fight for that microcosm of empire and its abuses. And in the same way, ICE is sort of like our local, IDF that's unifying us here in the States and bringing us together, where we have, just unprecedented powers of numbers. And really, for the first time, I think people with my color skin, feel like we're right there under the baton. I mean, I had the I don't want to call it the pleasure, the shock really of being assaulted, by police at a peaceful gathering at St. Louis, standing as part of a student, encampment on behalf of Gaza. And we were charged by IDF trained stormtroopers. And, when that happens, it really changes how you think about your safety and what you take for granted. And, and you actually have a learned personal experience of what people with, darker color skin grow up with all the time. And so it's a very unifying experience. And our numbers are absolutely, they're unstoppable. And as Alice Walker, the poet and novelist, said, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. And I think this is that moment of realization how much power we have. And it's people in their isolation and people who are, sort of lulled into despair and powerlessness by the likes of, the New York Times or PBS NewsHour or, any old corporate news. They keep us feeling very divided, defeated, and resistance is futile. But that's absolutely not true. The opposite is true. And this is a time of great discovery. So, it's the fight has only begun. And this is part of it. And the person who's sitting here across the table from me is very much part of that fight and always has been. And I think Medea Benjamin needs no introduction. Code Pink needs no background. But just suffice it to say that Medea just came back from delivering some thousands of pounds worth of lentils to Cuba. And, even as the airlines are being curtailed, I have no idea how you got back, Medea, and I'm glad you didn't get stranded. But thank you for all you do. And, we're all learning that we all need to be Medea. We need to be, we all need to be channeling Medea now and just standing up fearlessly. So, I think you get away from it because you're not a large, imposing Black man, and you're 6 feet tall.
Inside I am.
You wouldn't be living if that were the case. So you get away with doing some really awesome and wonderful things that we all need to take a lesson from. So we're hoping, especially that, because this is about, what we really want to do tonight is empower ourselves to wrestle with elected officials and compel them to do the right thing, or at least to know that we know what's up and we are going to hold them accountable. If not now, then in the next election, we're going to hold them accountable because there are people who are running to do the right thing, especially outside of the duopoly and the warmonger politics. So, we're really hoping that you can help. Just how do you take it? How do you take going to Congress? And it's not like people need to do that. What we really want to do here is just mobilize a flood of phone calls. We want to jam their switchboards. We want to jam their switchboards with the demand that that ICE and CBP receive zero funding, and then we'll move on to the demand that the prior batch of $140 billion, that's the number, that be rescinded and, put it into Medicare for all or something useful instead of, tearing up our country with our, the fruits of our tax dollars. But, how you manage to get in there and keep fighting and how you deal with this very corrupt and toxic environment of our elected our current batch of elected officials. So take it away, Medea, from there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jill. Anytime Jill asks me to do something, I hop to it. And whenever then I see that Roger Waters is going to be on there, and Butch and Fernando and Anthony, what a great group that you gather in no time. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. Jill, you mentioned that I just came back from Cuba, so I do want to say that the way that this administration, pushed by Marco Rubio, is starving deliberately the people of Cuba and trying to keep every drop of oil from coming into that country is really something we've never seen in our lifetimes right now. And um, I'm part of a group that's organizing a flotilla and by land, air, and sea going to Cuba. So we'd love for you all to get on board. And Roger, if there's a way we could get your name associated with it, that would be wonderful. But there's a lot of excitement about challenging this. Um, you ask Jill how I take it. Well, I go every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday into Congress when I'm around. And today was just another interesting example. Yesterday and today, there were hearings about ICE. And Fernando, you brought up what the Democrats are trying to do. And I think it is really important because those of us on this call, I think, have recognized that the two-party system is just absolutely beyond broken. But it is important to recognize just what is being discussed right now because on Saturday, the funding for DHS runs out. And so they are desperately trying to find some solution that will convince the American people from the Democrat side that they are serious and they are, quote, doing something because the public opinion polls do show that the majority of Americans actually want to abolish ICE. And when you just put the Democrats, it's 76%. So that is a huge number. Well, I just want to read to you what it is that Chuck Schumer is calling for, because he is the one that's leading the charge. And he's saying the key conditions for funding ICE are judicial warrants, but that's before entering a private residence, body cameras and identification, restrictions on arrest locations from sensitive places like schools, hospitals, churches, courts, and polling stations, de-escalation, and more training, ending roving patrols that target individuals in their homes and on the streets without specific warrants, and ensuring that state and local jurisdictions retain the ability to investigate excessive force, and then require the authorities to verify that a person is not a U.S. citizen before they are detained. So that really is the bottom line of what the majority of Democrats are calling for. The majority of Democrats are not calling for abolishing ICE, which shouldn't surprise us, given that there are so many areas in which the majority of Democrats would like to see major changes, but the people in Congress are not on board with them. It is interesting, though, that there are a number of bills in Congress that we can and should be supporting. The easiest one for Democrats, because it doesn't change the composition or anything of ICE, is the one that's just calling for the impeachment of Kristi Noem. And that one has the most Democrats. It has 187 Democrats on it right now, and every day more and more signing up. This is an easy bill for them. It shows that they want to, quote, do something, but doesn't get at the root of the issue. There is a bill called Abolish ICE that's introduced by a Representative Sri Thanadar, who is no progressive. So it's interesting that it's coming from him, and that is getting some support. But the real one that I think progressives ought to support is the one called Melt Ice. And that was introduced by Delia Ramirez, who is one of the best Congress people that we have right now, and Nydia Velasquez, who is one of the best in terms of issues relating to the immigrant community. So their bill, Melt Ice, is quite interesting because it says that money would be cut from funding of detention centers and that any contracts with detention centers would be phased out, and that that money would be moved into community organizations. So it's defunding ICE and moving the money to where we want it to go. So I think that's the best one for us to be supporting. And that's what we at Code Pink have been going around in Congress the last week and this week to push for more people to be supporting that bill. It is interesting that when you go through the halls of Congress, you do see some conservatives that are supporting maybe not abolishing ICE, but certainly transforming the way it functions. And the largest group is a business group called the American Business Immigrant Coalition. It has over 100 business leaders, and they are saying how much their businesses are being affected by the lack of labor to work in the fields, to work in the factories, to, of course, do, all of the domestic kind of work that people in this country are rely on, and we should be so grateful for. So that's an interesting, somewhat of an ally, but as I said, they don't want to abolish ICE. There are some members of the Republican Party. For example, the hearing today was chaired by Rand Paul, who is a Republican, but he is a libertarian. And he is very much disgusted about some of the practices of ICE. And he kept playing in slow motion the murder of Alex Preddy and went over it piece by piece to say, how could this administration be calling this man a domestic terrorist? And so it's good to see Republicans who care deeply about these issues bringing them up in the hearings. So we will see what happens very quickly. If there is not an agreement over the weekend, if there is an agreement over the weekend, the Congress is supposed to be on recess next week. They might be called back to vote if there is an agreement. If not, there will be a shutdown of DHS, which I don't think anybody on this call would be very unhappy about. What they tried to bring up in the hearings today is, oh, this will affect FEMA, and oh, this will affect the Coast Guard and all the things that we need so much, but, shut it down. I think, Jill, you were just right on target to say, what we need is just massive amounts of calls. The people in Minnesota have shown us the way. The people, Fernando, in Southern California have shown us the way. The people in Chicago have shown us the way. I mean, we have had great, great examples of wonderful mobilizing. And that street mobilizing is so absolutely critical to keep going. We also do need to flood the corrupt Congress that has two war parties. I think they are hearing from us quite a lot as we go into their offices. We do hear them answering the phones. You don't have to be a progressive, a green, an independent, a progressive Democrat to be against what ICE is doing. There are plenty and plenty of Republicans, and that shows it in the polls, plenty of Republicans who are really appalled by what they see happening in their community. So I just want to end with the same call that Butch and Fernando and Jill have said so far, and I'm sure we'll hear from the other speakers. Now is the moment to show our absolute disgust, our sense of outrage. People say, this is not the America that I know. I'm glad that Butch gave us a little history lesson there. But this is certainly not the America that we want to live in. And as we go forward, I think it is a great time to envision the kind of America we want to live in, which is one that embraces our brothers and sisters, no matter where they come from, and recognizes the beauty of the diversity that this country has. When I look at Spain and I see that they have embraced the immigrants and given citizenship to all of the immigrants because they know that they need them in the country. Well, we certainly need the immigrant community in this country. So let's show them that the love that they deserve and abolish ICE. Thank you.
Here. Yes, thank you so much, Medea. Thank you for your beautiful words and your inspirational action. Let me see here. Okay. And yeah, I think the bottom line right now that we really want people to take away from this meeting is that it's time to start calling, your senators in particular, because it's the senators that have power that is not held in the House. They do have the power to stop this because of that 60% requirement. So senators can prevent funding from ICE from going forward. But still, we want to pressure people, regardless of their party. They need to hear from us and that we're raising the bar here. They would like to talk us into hopelessness and resignation, but we're unleashing basically the dogs, the attack dogs in our own streets and on children and vulnerable people and on ourselves as well. So it's really the time for us to flood Congress with phone calls. And as to whether we're supporting a specific bill or more generally, we're going beyond a bill. And I agree with Medea that the Congresswoman from Chicago, the melt ice bill, Ramirez, right? Yeah, I mean, has boatloads of integrity and more than any other member of Congress. But I'm a little concerned about only withholding detention centers, or detention center money. Yeah, that can be very effective, but you still have all these personnel. And there are 22,000 of them right now, and they're about to double again. And these are maniacs, these are mostly psychopaths who like to shoot. And if you haven't checked out the song yet by Jesse Wells called Join ICE, check it out because it will make you feel good. It's exactly what ICE is about, and it's a really dangerous thing. And I don't want to see our tax dollars going to create more, armed psychopaths out there on our streets. So I think we don't have to have like a specific bill to show that there's enormous public momentum here to shut down ICE. And in the same way that it's rising in the polls, it's rising in our communities, we need to make that felt in the halls of power. They are not immune from the people that they're supposed to be representing. We need to hold their feet to the fire. And increasingly, we have alternatives who are out there running for Congress included. And one of them is Anthony Aguilar, who will be joining us shortly. He's coming from another engagement as well, and he'll be here soon enough. But in the meantime, we are so fortunate to have Roger with us, Roger Waters, who also needs no introduction as a living legend of music and art, and above all, just human values and the role that Roger is playing in the fights, the everyday fights now, these life and death fights that we're having for our future of humanity. The role that Roger's playing just cannot be overstated. So thank you, Roger, so much for putting up with all that you put up with and for letting us put you to work everywhere that we can. Thank you so much. So,
well, no, at all. I'm happy to be here. I've been listening to you. Hang on, how can I get rid of this? It says here unmute. Am I unmuted? Can you hear
no,
me?
you're good. You're good. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, it's been interesting listening to Medea and to you and all this talk about the Congress and flooding the telephone lines and whatever. When I hear the mention of the names Chuck and Schumer, those two words together, my blood runs effing cold. Because and I think, and as I listen to this, I live in the United States. I'm speaking to you from somewhere, on Long Island. I admit it. There I am. But I'm not a citizen of the United States. And when I hear like Chuck Schumer's name, I can't help thinking that this isn't just this, what we're going through is not just about um, Donald Trump and ICE and the murders in Minneapolis and what. Let's not forget that the last administration, the Biden administration, was 100% behind the genocide of the people of Palestine. And I'm bringing up the people of Palestine because when you look at the plan that the border peace, the so-called border peace, has for Gaza, and you see the drawings that the son-in-law, Jared Kushner and Witkoff, have produced of what they're going to do there with the help of Tony Blair and the other maniacs, absolute genocidal maniacs who get. I read today that Mr. Netanyahu is going to be part of the board of peace. I mean, dear God in heaven. Anyway, I don't mean to go down this path too far, but um, I'm become kind of nonplussed. I wish you all well. I tell you what, I flew all the way to California last weekend to be part of a meeting to encourage the people of California to vote for Butch Ware and to make him the next governor of California, because that would be an enormous step in the right direction. And who knows where that might end. So we're living in these very, very difficult times. I know I'm rambling, but I'm tired. I feel exhausted, and particularly the genocide exhausts me. And now I'll tell you what I'm going to do now, and it may seem an odd thing to do, but I've banged on for a couple of minutes. I've been working, I am a musician. That's what I do for a living. And I have been working on a new version of a song that I wrote in 1979. Okay. The song is Comfortably Numb, and I've been working on a new version with with a friend and musician, a lady called Mona Miari, who's Palestinian. So, and I'm going to play it now, and I hope that through this old U47 that I've got sitting here, you will be able to hear it. It'll be coming out of my speakers. So this is my gift, if you like, to all those of you. Give us a little bit of a rest from let's all pick up the phone and call Congress and make a difference and deal with ICE, because I'm so happy that you are. Okay. But there are bigger issues. If we don't stop these bastards, you will end up with the whole of the United States being like Gaza, with little enclaves to keep the slaves in. That's you. That's all of you. And big and beautiful golden towers for Zuckerberg and Bezos and Donald Trump and Jared Kushner to live in for the rich people. Okay, this is what is happening to you. This is what is happening. So I'm going to press play now. Okay, and I'm going to turn. I'm going to hope that this comes out loud of these speakers. And it's about 7 minutes long, so set yourself down. You won't be able to understand it when Mona sings because she's singing in Arabic, except, of course, all the people who speak Arabic. You'll be able to hear what I sing. And don't be put off by the fact that the first verse is the same as the first verse is on the record. It diverts from there and is only about Gaza. And it's for my brothers and sisters in Gaza because we have to do everything that we can to help. All right, here we go. Check this out. Um, oh, play it. Come on, you fool, play it. Press play. Hello, hello, hello. Is there anybody in there? Just not if you can hear me. Is there anyone at home? Come on now. I hear you feeling down. Well, I can ease the pain, get you on your feet again. Relax, relax, relax. I need some information first. Just the basic facts. Can you show me where it hurts?
بعد اللي صار ما في حدا ما ضل في كلام شو نفع السؤال كل اللي راح نار يا نار يا نار سكت الليل والنهار وليل يا دار وسط الزيتون ضلوا شمس بين النجوم مليء الجنان مشتاق اللي صار
I feel your pain from New York City. I feel your pain across the sea. That distant ship on the horizon is calling out to you and me.
وأنا صغير كان حلمي الحرية اليوم صار لاوي مجدول بكسر حجر تعطيت سن القطر للنور الغالي
You never know about the Nakba. I was only 5 years old in 48. We were unaware what was happening over there. It breaks my heart. I came on board so late. You reached us all with your rallying call. Now here we stand at the gate.
يا كاتب الورى اكتبوا مليها كيف كبر قد صار فيها وبقوا البيوت ناس التحت كتير بتموت الأرض بادئ ومكتوب
Time has come for a new beginning. It's time to draw a new line in the sand. Time to clean the slate, go back to 1948. Before the settlers stole the land. When Grandma's key unlocked the door, and everyone revered the olive tree. that every human life was sacred, every one, every daughter, every son, with equal human rights for everyone. Is that a lullaby? Is that your child's name? I hear you through the road. I can feel you. السماء I hear you every morning, praying with your mom. Your steadfast perseverance calls me from far. I hear a mother's prayer across the raging rain. I feel an angel's voice calling my name. Palestine was with me. I will cross the ocean just straight on my dream with equal rights for everyone from the river to the sea. Babo. I don't know. Oh, but I see Jill clapping her little hands together, which is really sweet and lovely. So that's what I've been doing with my day job, and I'm really glad and it's not finished yet. And I didn't ask Mona if I could play you. That's a work in progress. But what a beautiful voice she has, and I can't wait for that to be out as a video with subtitles so that everybody knows what everybody's saying. We know what she's saying and we know what I'm saying, because it's a conversation between an old English bloke living in, in Long Island and a Palestinian woman. And so anyway, and that's my contribution. And thank you very much for letting me do that. And yeah, we have to fight these bastards, because that they will do for us all if we don't fight back now. So if you're in California, you elect Butch Ware as your next governor, because he'll make a great governor. You have to decide whether you want a kind of welfare state. Do you want enough to eat? This is one of the things I said when I was in the meeting there in California last week. They're lyrics from another song of mine called The Gunner's Dream, and it goes, a place to say, enough to eat, somewhere old strangers shuffled safely down the street, where you can speak out loud about your doubts and fears. And what's more, no one ever disappears. You never hear their standard issue kicking in your door. You can relax on both sides of the tracks, blah, blah, blah. And what's even more important at the end is that, and everyone has recourse to the law, and no one kills the children anymore. Okay. And I got the audience there. Whenever I said, is that too much to ask? I went like that. And they all went, no. And it isn't too much to ask. That no one kills the children anymore? Is that too much to ask? Hell no. Enough to eat? Is that too much to ask? No. Okay, so I know I'm being a bit dramatic, but I've finished, Jill, and thank you for having me on. Okay.
Thank you, Roger. So beautifully said. And you know, you kind of have a way of distilling things down to their essence. And that really is the question, is it too much to ask that we not kill the children? Is it too much to ask that we not deport the children? Is it too much to ask that we not lock them up and torment them and, put them effectively in solitary confinement? I mean, we're seeing the country being Gazified. We are being treated like Gaza. Gaza is the model. And if we let Gaza be destroyed, we are effectively opening the door to the destruction of human rights and international law and all that. So it's a really great time to transition now. And again, thank you so much, Roger. It's a great time now to welcome Anthony Aguilar, who makes a very direct physical connection between Gaza and the struggle for human rights, for children's rights, for food, especially with Anthony having come, his real transformational moment, really, after 25 years of service in the armed forces, going to Gaza and intentionally to help feed people, and discovering that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was a scam, was a complete scam, and was really designed to help kill people and to help starve people. And that's sort of a microcosm of the peace, the board of peace. It's not a board of peace. It's a board of exploitation, of dispossession, of continuing genocide and displacement. So there's a very strong through line between Gaza and the IDF and the struggle here for the rights of migrants and safety in our communities and all that. So we're very lucky to have Anthony Aguilar with us here tonight. After 25 years of military service, Anthony retired and thought he was going, to have a peaceful life and make up for lost time with his family and his young son. And one thing led to another, and he's now taken on a whole new universe of service by challenging corrupt power and the military-industrial complex and the duopoly that serves it. So we're really so honored to have you here with us tonight, Anthony. And you've been at another event, another campaign event, another of your responsibilities, and thank you for making time and coming in here. I think this is just a perfect jumping off point for you to talk about the continuity between Gaza and the struggle of migrants here in this country and your experience. There have been a number of questions posed actually about, what does the military, how does the military connect via the IDF and the role of the IDF, both in training our police forces and also in training the ICE and Customs and Border Protection and all that. So take it away. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Jill. I'm currently in California, where the state where Butch Ware will be the next governor. So I'm out here visiting because I'm actually still here at the campus of UC Irvine. I spoke with the International Relations School. So actually invited by UC Irvine, officially endorsed by the university to talk about Gaza. So things are changing in terms of speaking about what's happening and how it affects Americans. And the through line of Gaza, the through line of oppression of Palestinians runs directly right into the heart of America. Not only do ICE agents and other three-letter federal agencies train with the IDF and the IDF train with them, the IDF is present in our Pentagon. They are present in our command headquarters. They are present in our highest levels of command in the geographic combatant commands. They have influence, they wield influence, and there is no doubt and there should be no thought that it is coincidence that what we are seeing, the tactics that we are seeing employed on the streets of our country by federal ICE agents are no different at all from the tactics that we see employed in Gaza, from the tactics we see employed in the West Bank. And where that starts, that doesn't just happen overnight. It starts with dehumanization. And what we were seeing in federal agencies right now, in the narrative that's coming from Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem or from Greg Bovino, is the dehumanization of Americans. That, oh well, that guy didn't have the right to be there. He was, oh, he had a gun, but he wasn't the typical person. He wasn't Republican, so him carrying a gun, he must have been up to no good. And this use of calling people domestic terrorists, it all is dehumanization, and that's how it starts. Dehumanization set in by oppressive tools of an authoritarian, and it's incipient and it's slow, but once it takes root, it's quick. And I think that's what we're seeing here I know that's what we're seeing here in the United States. And how does that trace back to everything else that we stand for as a Green Party? Well, when you talk about, I had this conversation with someone recently and I said, if universal health care, if universal housing, if education, childcare, if all those things were un-American and not important, why is it that every military recruiter offers that to every American to get them to join the military? Those are the exact offerings that the military uses to get Americans to join the army. Why? Because it's a good thing. It's what people want. And when you characterize that as well, that's not very American, it goes towards the dehumanization of people. On the world stage here in the United States, just this past Sunday, in the observation between the Super Bowl halftime show and the Turning Point All-American, quote unquote, halftime show, this disparity of what we saw: racism, cultural bigotry, and the attempt to spread that throughout our country is what we are seeing through the use of ICE, through the use of the federal government in its use of oppressive tactics against minorities and immigrants. Not because it's for security or the embedded in our country. It's bigotry, racism, it's prejudice. And it's so apparent now in our society that that's also tied to our governing and our politics. And it matters deeply to me, being from a cultural ethnic minority, being Mexican. I will not say immigrant because I'm not an immigrant. My family, on my Mexican side of my family, lived where they live right now in Texas, just south of San Antonio, years before Texas ever became part of the Union, years before Texas ever became a republic. On my family land, burial mounds that go back to hundreds of years. My family weren't immigrants, but they're indigenous and they're an ethnic minority. And I'm a Mexican in terms of my heritage, but I'm first and foremost an American. And you'd be surprised how many times, as a candidate, but also in someone that was speaking out for Palestinians, that the first characterization that people wanted to make of me, who were opposed to what I had to say, not to the truth, but to besmirch me, the first thing they attacked was my ethnicity. Well, you don't even belong in this country. I've had that said to me before. So that doesn't happen by accident. We're seeing that is being infused in society through language and information. And it ties back to directly how our people, how we the people are governed. Disparities in housing, disparities in income, disparities in healthcare. These aren't coincidences. And America, I know that America is starting to see this more and more clearly, especially what we see in the news in just the last 30 days. And Americans are starting to ask those hard questions. Why is my neighbor being detained by ICE and he's an American citizen, but a Canadian that's here illegally or undocumented isn't being scooped up by ICE? Why? What's the reason? I think it's clear. So we're starting to see that. But what I, for why I'm running as a Green, back to that in terms of the appreciation that the Green Party brings to that is equality, social justice, social equality. And for anybody that says that social equality and social justice is woke, well, I think that you probably fall on that line of being a racist and a bigot, because it's not woke. It's what makes our country great. And the Green Party definitely appreciates and recognizes that. And again, out here in California today, I just spoke to a classroom of about 200 students in the UC Irvine International Relations program. And it was a Thursday night lecture that they do here at the school, full of just amazing young students and I told them all, I said, why I feel it's important to come out here and talk to you all and engage not only what's going on in Gaza, but what's going on in our country, is because your generation will be the generation that brings monumental change to our country because of the way you see the world, the way that culture, ethnicity, race, those lines aren't red lines for you all in terms of how you identify each other because you're connected to the world. And I was so motivated by hearing some of their questions, but also hearing them discuss with each other. I came early and listened to one of the classroom lectures that was being provided by a professor and hearing some of the questions that some of these students asked. And it's very encouraging. And it leads me to believe that that's the America that Americans want, not what's currently being painted and what's currently being offered to us as what America is. It's not true. And as I look across the Green Party, as I look at, Butch Ware in California, I look at Greg Stoker in Texas, and you have me in North Carolina. All of those that are running in Michael Durbin in District 2, across the board. We're a very diverse and a very educated, diverse, experienced, deeply astute group of candidates. And I'm really, really proud to be running with the Green Party. And if I moved out here to California, I would vote for Butch Ware. But I got work to do in North Carolina, so I'm not going to be moving out here.
Bravo. Thank you so very much, Anthony. Thank you for making the time. Thank you for making the sacrifice after 25 years of, being on the front lines of actual physical combat. Now you're on the front lines of political combat, and we can't thank
Moral
you.
combat, really.
What's that? What kind of
Moral combat?
moral combat? Yes. Yeah, it really is. We're really at a kind of a moral inflection point, right now, because we have become as corrupted and really instruments of horrific evil, whether you look at sort of the Jeffrey Epstein class that rules us through both parties and really rules the financial drivers of the world to, the war economy and the sense of endless war and genocide. We've kind of gone into the depths, and as we've hit rock bottom, with this kind of unbelievably corrupt and disgusting elites that sort of dominate power.
On both sides, bipartisan. The evil is ubiquitous across both parties. They're one and the same. And the video that I released yesterday about talking about, if you look at the United States Congress Subcommittee for Homeland Security, every single member of that committee takes money from AIPAC. Every single one of them, every Democrat and every Republican, to the tune of over $7 million just in that one committee. And every single one of them takes money from AIPAC. This is the Democrat and the Republican Party are two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely. And we could, I think, go on for hours about kind of the crisis that we face right now in every dimension of our lives, from healthcare to housing to education to jobs, the climate, which is, which has really been hit by another big, crisis with basically the repeal of the various climate protections now, due to the executive orders, essentially that our health is fine, that climate doesn't constitute basically a death warrant, on us. So we could go very deep. But in many ways, we also see things turning around. And it's sort of wonderful that our first speaker was of Mexican heritage, and our last speaker tonight is also of Mexican heritage. And you're sort of like the wraparound here. And that's so interesting. I didn't know that your family, we're really the immigrants into your world. That is us white Europeans. And your family history really, exemplifies that, Anthony. But the point I want to make, and the reason for us gathering here tonight, is because of this particular moment, because there's so much money now. Our tax dollars have been so thrown into not only the whole, the same Congress that just exploded the funding for ICE and Customs and Border Protection also exploded the funding for the military. And we have the biggest military budget ever in our history. And it's like 1 trillion dollars. It's completely off the charts. And, Trump who is going to be the peace president, who wants to award himself, the Nobel Prize for Peace, has bombed some 7 countries just since he's been in office. So this Congress, in all of its corruption, is spending our tax dollars on war, and then on the war abroad, the many wars abroad, and the war at home, and the war machine. And ICE and CBP are very much part of that. But we happen to be at this tipping point right now. So it really is an unprecedented moment of opportunity, because people are horrified by what's going on. They don't hear that this is actually something we can stop. And that's really the larger purpose of our gathering tonight, is to just help drive home that we do have the right and the responsibility and the capacity and the mechanisms, and we really have the moment to stand up and say, enough is enough. We're going to stop funding this war on migrants, but it's really a war on all of us here at home. And because this funding is in the balance, there's a lot of resistance, as Medea mentioned. The majority of Americans oppose ICE. They want to see this corrupt and violent and irredeemable institution. You can't, if a organization does not respect laws and rules, it doesn't help to make more rules to rein them in. Much of what they do is already unconstitutional and illegal. They are required already to have judicial warrants. So having another requirement for judicial warrants is not going to solve the problem. And as Fernando said, it's not okay for them to be able to kidnap us, but just without a mask. It's not okay to be kidnapping us. And another rule that the Democrats are calling for is that they can't do this to American citizens. Well, that's already provided for. So let's not fool ourselves into thinking that we can sprinkle fairy dust on this and make ICE and CBP okay. They're not okay. The way to make them okay is by getting rid of ICE. We're not proposing that we get rid of CBP, at this point, but at this point we can stop at least with ICE, and we should reverse that mountain of funding that's been flooding both ICE and CBP. So those are really our 2 requests. Stop any further funding, especially the funding that's hanging in the balance right now, and then start going back and so-called rescinding, that is, repealing this $140 billion that was given to both ICE and CBP. But let's start with first things first. This is a real window of opportunity right now, because all eyes are on what's going on the Congress, but they don't want you to understand the larger dynamics and the fact that they can stop this. They absolutely can stop this. The Democrats can stop this by simply exercising party unity, that's the norm in Congress. So it shouldn't be like a shock to ask them to stand up and be an opposition party, because they're not. And they duck that responsibility. So we need to hold their feet to the fire. And this is the moment to do it. And we're really appreciative, all our speakers, for coming out tonight on very short notice, and to all of you who are here online, and we're also out on YouTube. We are live streaming, and we'll have a video to carry on. And we hope that people will follow up, and we will send out, sometimes people like to have talking points if they're going to make a phone call or if they're going to email. We'll have model letters and talking points and so on, if that will help you do it. But I think beginning to just stir up a real outcry, an outpouring, a demand that we shut down this criminal enterprise of ICE, which is causing, all mayhem and rampaging through our streets. We can shut this down, and this is the time for us to do it. And I want to give a big thank you to Roger, to Fernando, to Medea, Anthony. Thank you all so much for being a part of this tonight. Thank you to the folks out that have been making this work. Thank you to Mark Alborno. Thank you to Edie Arndell, to Kathy Gilbert. Thank you all so much for making this happen. This has been a real kind of grassroots mobilization, like what's going on out there right now, to shut down ICE and to liberate our communities to the rights and the just future that we all deserve. So thank you, everybody, so much. Really appreciate everything you're doing. Let's make it happen. Unstoppable together. We're not outnumbered. We're just out organized. So let's keep organizing. Thank you all so very much.